Thanks for joining us. Today is our 10th episode and our last one for a bit. We're going to take a break over the summer months. So we're really excited today for our guest. This series is to talk about menopause, perimenopause, postmenopause, and all things related to it, the experience, the thoughts, the feelings, from an Indigenous perspective. What does it mean for Indigenous people who menstruate to go through menopause, trying to think about specific challenges that we have, or what are our teachings around it, including what did we call it? So that brings us to the name that we decided on for the series. So it's in Cree, it's nôtokwêw pônkiyokêwin, which loosely translates into English as the old lady stops visiting. So the grandmother stops visiting. And that is in reference to moon times, which are often referred to as when your grandmother comes to visit. So in thinking about and talking about menopause from an Indigenous perspective, one of the first things we wanted to do was find out what do we call it in Indigenous languages, because that would give you a sense, or we thought it should give you a sense about what are some of those teachings around this time in your life, because it is a significant time in your life. Not only are the changes very demanding physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, but given that our life expectancy has increased greatly over the last decades or so, some of us will live to be 90 years old, 100 years old, 80 years old, which could mean that you spend half of your lifetime in postmenopause. So this was a conversation that people didn't seem to be quite having as much as we realized we needed to once we started to experience this and have questions. And like I mentioned, especially from an Indigenous worldview and experience. So that's just a little bit background on our conversations. And I don't know if I introduced myself. I'm Tanya Kappo. I'm from the Sturgeon Lake Cree Nation in Treaty 8 territory. And that's just a little bit of the introduction. So I'm going to pass it over to Christi to introduce herself and speak a little bit more before we get into today's episode.
Hi, everybody. My name is Christi Belcourt, and I am Métis from the community of Lac St. Anne in Alberta, but I was never raised there. I was raised in Ontario within Anishinaabeg territory, and I've lived here all my life. I am really happy for today's episode. Wanjira is somebody who before I deleted TikTok off my phone because I just found it too invasive in my life. I followed on TikTok and I follow on Instagram, and I found her TikTok videos on menopause particularly engaging. It was always some, and what I really liked was particularly one little video where you're like, are you bumping into walls and finding like the metal taste of spoons is strange in your mouth? And I was like, that's me. That's me. I thought that this was just like something weird that was happening to me, and we live in these kind of, our lives are okay for the most part. We're fairly healthy, whatever. And then we don't think that our things that we're going through are worthy of even mentioning. We just figure they're going to pass, or, we don't really understand what that's about. And to find out that these things are related to menopause was just mind-blowing. So as Tanya was saying, we've had 9 episodes so far. We've spoken to Dr. Janet Smiley. We had Lana Whiskey Jack on, Jennifer Bademski. We had our elders on, and others who came and spoke about everything from midwifery to life cycles to violence against Indigenous women, and the history of colonialism and how that plays into our experiences through menopause, our experiences not only in our bodies, but how our bodies are treated or perceived by the Western medicine, institutions. We talked about medical racism. We've done a lot of discussing, and through this series, we're hoping that we will piece together like a puzzle, little bits of information that people will find helpful to them. We talked about hormone replacement therapy. We've really gone through a lot of different things in our episodes. What we're planning on doing is taking a break after this, and we'll revisit it, and Tanya and I will talk and see if we want to come back. And we have other subjects that we wanted to discuss, which I feel that we'll probably come back in the fall or early winter and begin it again. So without further ado, I want to welcome our guest, Wanjira. And we always ask that you introduce yourself in the way that you feel most comfortable. And so we'll leave it there, and I'll get you to introduce yourself now.
All right. Thank you so much, Christi. Thank you, Tanya. So my name is Wanjira, and I'm in Montreal. I was born in Kenya, so I'm not originally from Montreal. I was born in Kenya and grew up in Kenya and left Kenya a few years ago to go and study in France and then moved to Montreal. So I call this home now, but I'm originally from Kenya. And here in Montreal, I work as a yoga teacher, a massage therapist, and a menopause coach. And you might be wondering, what does a menopause coach do? A menopause coach, I get women who are going through menopause and try to help them navigate this stage, because it's a very difficult stage where we're taught everything about puberty. Our parents are willing to teach us through everything about puberty. Sometimes we go to school, we learn about puberty, but nobody teaches us about menopause. You're just left out into the world on your own. So that's what I do. I take menopausal women and guide them in nutrition, in exercise, in self-care, and what they can do to make this transition easier. So I am going to be mixing things, like I'll be talking from a scientific view and also from kind of an indigenous view, what menopause is. So menopause has 3 stages. There's perimenopause, menopause, and postmenopause. Perimenopause can start anywhere from the age of 35, and it can last from 5 years to 10 years. So you could have a woman who starts perimenopause at age 35 and does not get into menopause until they're 45 or even 55. And perimenopause, you notice things begin to change. Your periods, one of the major changes is your periods. So when the grandmother comes to visit, that changes. It may get very heavy. It may also get more frequent and more painful, and last maybe for a long time. And this is the time when we say women become super soakers. So super soakers means if you're using pads, you might notice now you don't need only one pad. Maybe you need a tampon and a pad, and you have to be very careful what clothes you're wearing, because even though you never used to notice your menstrual periods before, now you're noticing them and you're becoming more nervous about, are you going to have an accident? That's perimenopause. That's when it begins to happen. Then things like mood changes will begin at that time. You might also notice that you're not sleeping very well. So perimenopause goes through that period, however long it will last for you. It's different for every woman. Every menopause journey is different. And then on the day when, then the periods will stop. There is a moment where things will stop. You'll notice maybe you go for 3 months, no periods, and then they come back. Surprise! And then they go for another 5 months, no periods. But there will come a time when you will go for 12 months without a period. On the day when you hit 12 months without a period, you are officially in menopause. That's the anniversary of your periods ending. Menopause is only one day, that day. And then the next day, you're post-menopause. And then that will last. For everybody is very different. Some people, it can last for 10 years. Others, it can last 15 years. So what's going on during peri, post, and menopause and post? Estrogen, we have two major hormones, two sex hormones, which is estrogen and progesterone. We do have testosterone, but testosterone doesn't play a very big role in menopause, and it doesn't change very much. The only reason we think that testosterone changes is because the other two are changing. So we have progesterone and estrogen. And you want to think of these two hormones like twin sisters. And there's a twin sister who is the playful one, who likes to take risks, who like to do things in a very rambunctious way. That's estrogen. And then progesterone calms her down. So progesterone is the one that's telling the twin sister, oh, okay, sis, let's calm down. Let's make sure we know what we are doing here. So estrogen, who is the very rambunctious twin, is very prominent in the body. We have estrogen receptors everywhere in the body, in the brain, in the bones, in the joints, in the muscles, in the pelvic floor, in our guts, everywhere we have estrogen. So now you can imagine estrogen going down. That means all the things it was protecting, the brain, the bones, the muscles, the joints, all of them have been affected because they don't have that protection from estrogen. Progesterone, the one that takes care of estrogen, now when estrogen is going down, progesterone also begins to go down. And progesterone affects our moods, our sleep. It's also the uterus protector. It is what protects the uterus. And that's why you're noticing that as estrogen is going down, your uterus is now changing. So you're getting more thickening of the lining of the uterus. That's why your periods are getting heavier. And that's why they're getting longer, because the uterus is thickening. And it is very common, especially with people of color, indigenous people, to even begin getting problems at that stage. That's when, women are beginning to get, you go to the doctor and the doctor said, you need a hysterectomy because we just can't deal with the lining of the uterus. It's getting to be very thick. The other thing that happens from an indigenous point of view is that the children have left home. And what's happening is the energy of the uterus is the energy that we use to look after our families. That's the energy that you get up early in the morning that gives you that energy to make breakfast for your children, to dress them up, to get them off to their school. Now they have left. Now this energy has nowhere to go. And that's why many women get problems at that time in this ovarian uterus department, because that energy is staying stagnant. So that's also menopause, but it is also from an energetic point of view and from a point of view of what we are meant to do as women, not from the scientific part, but what our role in life is. The children have left home, so this energy now has nowhere to go. And we need to take care of that. I will come back to that. So estrogen, progesterone has gone down. You're left with no protection. Now, what we need to do is to think, what am I going to replace estrogen with? And what am I going to replace progesterone with? Because I don't have any protection. I like to think of it like you go to war. When you see a soldier going to war, they have their shield and they have their armor. Their body is covered in armor. You want to think of estrogen as the armor that covers the body when you go to war, and progesterone is the shield. Now you're going to war with no shield and no armor. And so arrows, bullets are coming from every side, but you're standing in the middle of the field with nothing to protect you. That's what menopause is. So what do you do? In the modern world, you would wear a bulletproof vest. If you don't have an armor and a shield, your bulletproof vest is everything that you do in this stage to protect yourself. That's your bulletproof, because you have no armor, you have no shield. So when there are different times that there are different ways that menopause can change. You can get into what's called surgical menopause. That means that you will get into menopause earlier. If you have so many problems in your uterus, if your uterus is creating a lot of issues medically, then the doctor might say, we need to get the uterus out. If the doctor removes the uterus and they remove your ovaries with the uterus, you go into menopause the following day. It doesn't matter how young you are. You may be 35, you may be 25. If they remove the uterus and the ovaries, you go into menopause the following day because you have no more estrogen and you have no more progesterone. If you go into a hysterectomy, uterus removal, and they leave the ovaries, you can be sure that in 2 or 3 years, you will be into menopause, even if you're 35 or 25. Because as soon as they remove the uterus, the ovaries then begin to slow down. And within a few years, you're into full menopause. Progesterone is what protects our uterus. So if you don't have a uterus and you're going to go through the route of getting, nowadays they call it menopause hormone therapy instead of hormonotherapy, replacement therapy, because hormone replacement therapy is used by everybody. Even children who are having difficulties can be given hormones to replace whatever. Anybody who has a thyroid problems get hormone replacement therapy. So they're trying to differentiate menopause from all other hormones, and that's why we call it menopause hormone therapy. If you're going to go for menopause hormone therapy and you don't have a uterus, you don't get progesterone because you don't need it. You don't have a uterus to be protected. And this is where it gets a little bit complicated because remember I said progesterone is the twin sister who slows things down, who keeps your mood even, who helps you with your sleep. Now you don't have that and you're not getting it from anywhere. And that's one of the major things that menopausal women suffer from is mood problems, sleep, depression, anxiety, because we don't have that estrogen. We don't have the progesterone to buffer that. So when it comes to self-care at this time of your life, you need to look, what am I going to do to protect my moods? What am I going to do to protect my brain? Because I don't have estrogen to protect it. What am I going to do to protect my muscles? You don't have anything to protect it. And I will tell you why we need to protect the muscles. What am I going to do to protect my bones? Because estrogen also helps us to protect our bones, but we don't have it protecting us now. What am I going to do to protect my pelvic floor? The pelvic floor is a muscle. That's one area that I specialize in. It's a muscle. How am I going to do to protect it? What am I going to do to protect my joints? And I know that most menopausal women have gone through this. One day you wake up in the morning and you can't squat. Yesterday you were squatting. Today you can't squat. And you're wondering what happened. Well, estrogen left. So your joints are now as thick rubber bands. You can't go down into a squat. You can't bend over the way you used to bend over. You get up in the morning and you feel like you've grown into a 90-year-old woman because estrogen has left. So what are you going to do to protect all those things? That's where menopause has to change. We have to change our way of thinking. And the reason why I say we have to change our way of thinking is that the medical field is not ready for us. It isn't ready. We don't matter. We don't matter. We are not as productive in society as the 25-year-old. If a 25-year-old has a problem, they will take care of that. But we are on our way out. So why should we invest money in people who are on their way out? So we need to take care of ourselves. The other thing is, as Indigenous people and people of color, there's what's called adjustment. They have to adjust in the medical field for everything. Guess many people don't know this, but when you go and get a blood test, there's what's known as adjustment theory. They have to adjust for Black people or Indigenous people. We are said not to feel pain as much as the white people. So if your kidneys are failing and you're an Indigenous woman, you won't be taken care of as much as the other white person because the white person is seen as though their pain is much higher than yours. Their deterioration is faster than yours. That's what's considered, which is not true, but it's called the adjustment theory. Everything has to be adjusted. So when you're an Indigenous woman and you go and tell your doctor, I'm suffering from anxiety, I'm suffering from depression, they don't consider menopause as your problem. They consider all the other things as your problems, but this is not, menopause is not your problem. So you have to take care of yourself because the medical field is not ready for you. It's also not willing to be ready for you. That's where we have to take care of ourselves. So how do we take care of ourselves in menopause? Self-care, sleep. You have to take care of sleep. When you don't sleep well, you don't recover. You are inflamed, you're in pain, you're forever inflamed, you get chronic infection, chronic inflammation. And sleep is a big one because life happens, life has to happen. Most women are either self-employed or they're taking care of families. And so you are the last one. So sleep is not your priority. But if you don't sleep, you can't take care of yourself and you're not good to anybody. Then we have to manage our blood sugar. And one of the reasons why I like to talk a lot about blood sugar is because Indigenous people are affected more by blood sugar problems, more than their white counterparts. One of the reasons for that is as long as Indigenous people were eating their native food, their bodies were happy. Then come in the modern food, bread, hamburgers, things that the Indigenous body doesn't know, it can't manage that. So that's one strike against you. The other strike against you is that you don't have estrogen. When you don't have estrogen, your body becomes very inefficient at managing blood sugar. And this is also the time when you get many women diagnosed with blood sugar issues. So you are either insulin intolerant or you have diabetes. It's not strange to have so many people in menopause with diabetes. It's because our bodies can't manage. So we have to manage blood sugar. Then we have to protect our bones. And we also have to build our muscles. And the reason why we have to build our muscles is that muscle is the same thing that's going to help us manage blood sugar. The stronger your muscles, the healthier your muscles, the more you can manage blood sugar. The healthier muscles you have, the more protection your bones have, the more your bones you're protected. Because bones react to stress. The stress that we put on our bones comes from our muscles. By exercising those muscles, building those muscles, you put stress on your bones, but that's good stress. It strengthens the bones. So we need to protect it because if not, at this stage, we begin to be diagnosed with osteoporosis. So that's the bulletproof, is we have to exercise. Then you have to take care of your brain. Because remember, I said estrogen, we have estrogen receptors in the brain. Now, and I don't want to sound so gloomy, but 1 out of every 3 people diagnosed with Alzheimer's or dementia is a woman. 3 people with dementia, every 1 person of those 3, two people in 3 diagnosed with dementia are women. And this is mostly now they have to realize it's because of estrogen, because we don't have estrogen at that time in our lives. So our brains are not protected. So we get diagnosed with all kind of cognitive decline. So we have to protect our brains. What do we need to do to protect our brains? We need to take care of our food. Going back to the original food, when people used to eat good fats, vegetables, and forgot all about the sugar. There was no sugar. Sugar came from fruit and honey. It didn't come from a factory somewhere. We have to go back to those foods because those foods protected our brains. Remember the grandmother in all our society, the grandmother was the wise woman. She wasn't the woman with dementia. She was the wise woman. And she could not have been wise without a brain that was functioning very well. Her brain was healthy. So we have to go back to that place where the woman in menopause was the wise woman because her brain was functioning properly. So we protect our brain by taking care of our foods, cutting out all the sugar, exercising, sleeping. That's the way we take care of our brains, so that we are not that statistics that's been diagnosed with Alzheimer's. The other thing that's affected so much in menopause is the pelvic floor. So when we get into menopause, many women begin to have things like vaginal dryness. They begin to have things like incontinence. There are two types of incontinence. There's what we call urge incontinence. That means that you have to go. You have to go, you have to go, you have to go. And you're running to the bathroom, and God help you if you make it. That's urge incontinence. The other one is stress incontinence. So something stresses you and you have to go. So those are three things that women are diagnosed with in menopause. The other one is organ prolapse. The pelvic floor sits in a bowl. Oh, I have my pelvic floor here. I can demonstrate. So this is the pelvic floor. And the organs, your bladder, your uterus, and your rectum all sit into this bowl. Now, in menopause, this becomes very weak because we have just said that estrogen also protects our muscles. But the muscles of the pelvic floor are like any other muscles. They're like your muscles, the muscles of your arm. So if the muscles of your arm are losing strength because you don't have estrogen in menopause, these two are losing strength. And that's why so many people in menopause are diagnosed with things like organ prolapse. What does an organ prolapse mean? It means that any one of the three organs, the uterus, the bladder, or the rectum, can start protruding out of the vaginal wall. And it is very common in menopause. So we need to strengthen this so that we don't get those problems. Because when you get those problems, you're either stuck with it, and as we know from the medical history, we're not the first ones to be treated. So you're either stuck with it, and then eventually it will lead to something like surgery. So we need to protect the pelvic floor. We need to protect our heart. Many women are diagnosed with heart problems at this time. Before the age of 50, men are leading in heart disease. After the age of 50, women pick up and they are leading in heart disease. And again, it's that same estrogen. Remember, we said it's our armor. We don't have the armor. Now we have to look for a way to bulletproof that. So exercise, the way we eat, making sure that we take care of our cholesterol, all that is bulletproofing our lives because we do not have that estrogen that's protecting us. So self-care, sleep, exercise, managing blood sugar, exercise, strength training. And I know this is so tough. When I tell women to strength train, they look at me like, I don't even know where to start. I don't know what to do. Strength training, contact somebody who can tell you where to start. I can tell you where to start if you contact me. So strength training, and you need to get there, women. Don't be shy. You're not going to bulk up. You're not going to be the next Arnold Schwarzenegger. That's the fear that people have. You're not going to be Arnold Schwarzenegger. First of all, you don't have the testosterone. Men have testosterone. That's why they bulk up. We don't have that much but testosterone. We do have some, but it isn't that much. So strength training 3 or 4 times a week, that's what we need. Forget the cardio, forget this running on the treadmill. That won't save your bones. That will not save your muscles. You have to build strength. You have to do resistance training, weight training, strength training, build muscle, because the healthier your muscle, the better you can manage blood glucose, the better you can manage your weight, metabolism, the better you can manage your bones, the better you can manage your heart. Strength training, it's the key. Muscle is the organ of longevity. Please repeat that after me and write it down somewhere on a post-it note. Muscle is the organ of longevity. The healthier your muscle is, the healthier you will be able to transition without so many issues. Just remember that you have to bulletproof. Everything you do at this stage of your life is your bulletproof vest. It's your bulletproof vest. So sleep, exercise, blood sugar management, brain, food. Let's talk about food. That's a big one. The question that I get asked a lot is, does menopause cause weight gain? No, it doesn't. Menopause doesn't cause weight gain. All the other things that happen in menopause cause weight gain. So we're in menopause, we're not sleeping very well. When we don't sleep well, we are in pain, we don't exercise, we make poor food choices. When we are in menopause, blood sugar is not managed properly. When blood sugar is not managed properly and we don't eat properly, then we may gain weight. When we are in menopause, most of us are also taking care of family members. We maybe have a sick spouse in the house. Maybe we have children that we have to assist. Maybe we have grandchildren that we have to help with. We are the last on that list of self-care. That could lead to weight gain. When we are in menopause, we may be depressed. When we are depressed, we're not making the best food choices. That could lead to weight gain. But there is one thing that menopause does. It does change where we store our fat. And guess where we store it? We start storing it in the middle. So we have the menobelly, as it is called. So one thing you have to remember, menopause changes where we store our fat. Even if we were storing it on our hips earlier, we now begin to store it around the middle. And that's just the way nature is. Nature thinks you need to be protected somewhere. So nature protects you closest with fat closest to the organ that it wants to protect. It wants to protect the heart, it brings the weight to the middle because it's closest to the heart to protect the heart. So we have to change everything to manage that weight. That weight that we store around the middle is very bad because it's the weight that's covering our organs. It covers your liver, it covers your heart, it covers your intestines, which is not safe. It's not safe at all for us. So we need to do everything we can do to get rid of that. It's not, I don't want to say you have to be skinny. You don't have to be skinny, but you have to be healthy. That's the key. We have to be healthy. So let me show you a few exercises so that I can leave time for questions. I will show you a few exercises that you can be able to do for the pelvic floor. As I said, I take care of the pelvic floor, so I will show you some exercises that you can do, very simple exercises that you can do at home. You don't need anything, any equipment. You can do them seated on a chair. If you're able to go on the floor, I will show you some exercises to do on the floor. They're very easy. First thing to keep your pelvic floor healthy is breath. If you're not breathing properly, your pelvic floor is in trouble. So how do you breathe? You're going to ask, okay? Most of us are shallow breathers, so we breathe with just up here. That's all we breathe. We don't take the breath down to the belly. So we are going to sit upright on your chair, wherever you are at home, and just make sure that your feet are nicely grounded on the ground. And we're just going to bring one hand on the chest and the other hand on the belly. And just take a normal breath. Don't change anything. Just take your normal breath, how you take your normal breath at home. Inhaling. Just notice how you inhale. Notice what's moving as you inhale. And then exhale and notice what's moving as you exhale. Taking another inhale. And then exhale. Now, what I would like to suggest is that you inhale and take the breath all the way to the hand that's at the belly. Expand your belly. And then exhale and notice if your hand, the hand at the belly, can move in. That means that you're exhaling even through the belly. So inhale again, take a nice breath in through the nose, and then exhale. Okay, now, can you keep this, guys, quiet? So the shoulders very quiet as you inhale, keep your shoulders quiet, and then exhale. Excellent. And we're going to change that a little bit. Bring your hands onto your ribs. And I'm just going to stand a little bit so that I can show you where the ribs are. So I want your hands here. And now as you inhale, can you expand even the ribs where your hands are? And try not to lift your shoulders up. So inhale again. If you like to stand for this one, you can always stand if it's better for you. And then exhale. And one more time, inhale. And then exhale. All right. Now let's put one hand on the chest and the other one in the back body. So I'm just going to put my hand right there. And now as I inhale, I want to move those two hands. So I want to feel even my breath in the back. And then exhale. And one more time, inhale. And exhale. Excellent, good, and relax. And I will tell you why breath is key in pelvic floor health, is that your diaphragm sits like this. This is the breathing muscle. This is the muscle that just goes down as we inhale, and then it moves up as we exhale. The pelvic floor sits in the same way, but it sits this way. So what is happening is when you inhale and expand everything, the two of them move away from each other so they can give air space to get in. And as you exhale, they both move down at the same time. So they work, the two of them work in that synchronicity. And they both work to protect the pelvic floor and all the organs there. Remember, I said that these muscles of the pelvic floor do get weak. And when they get weak, that's when we start getting bladder issues. We start getting prolapses. So we need to make sure that the breath is going all the way to the pelvic floor so as to keep those muscles healthy. And then as you exhale, you want to feel all of the diaphragm coming back up and the pelvic floor rising. So inhaling, the two of them expand. As you exhale, they both move at the same time. So now, what about the pelvic floor? What do I want you to do at the pelvic floor to keep the pelvic floor nice and comfortable? As you inhale, relax the pelvic floor. Just let it go. Let your belly expand, let it go. And then as you exhale, I want you to exhale softly through pursed lips. So as though you open your mouth a little bit, as though you're breathing out through a straw. Inhale one more time, expand everything. Exhale through that straw. And what you might notice is that you're feeling the pelvic floor. Now most of us are women here, so I'm just going to say the area is the perineum where your coccyx and the pubic bone are. You're feeling them just lifting up a little bit. That's what we want. We want them to lift up a little bit. Imagine the way I teach my classes, my pelvic floor classes, is imagine you're going to stop a pee-pee. So you're not going to pee-pee. And then imagine that you're in the elevator with the most gorgeous man on earth, and you're going to stop a fart. That's when the pelvic floor has lifted. Did you notice what happened? The pelvic floor just lifted. So that's where we want the exhale. So we inhale, we let everything relax. And then as you exhale through pursed lips, you want to stop a pee-pee and you want to stop a fart because you're in an elevator with your most gorgeous guy. And then relax. All right. So that makes it possible for us to breathe in a way that the pelvic floor is happy. So when we inhale, we let go. Most people don't let go of their abdomen, so the abdomen stays squished in, and that is very bad for the pelvic floor. We want to expand the belly and the pelvic floor as we inhale, and then we just let them draw in as we exhale. When we are holding too tight, the pelvic floor gets weak, and it is not any good for anybody. All right, the next exercise is a child's pose. Now, those who have done yoga, you know how to do a child's pose on the floor, but I'm just going to turn my camera just a little bit and I will show you how to do a child's pose with a chair. Child's pose is very good for relaxing the pelvic floor. So I hope you can see me. I'm not too far. All right, good. All right, good. Thanks you. So you open your legs wide and you're just going to come down, place your hands on the floor and just inhale here and exhale Inhale, exhale. What's that doing? It's going to relax those inner thigh muscles that connect to the pelvic floor, making it nice and smooth for you to breathe in and breathe out there in the child's pose. Those who have done yoga, you know the child's pose on the floor. I'm going to come into a quick child's pose here. Knees are open wide. And you just extend your arms here into the child's pose. One of the best exercises to relax the pelvic floor, relaxing those inner thigh muscles. And if you need just more instructions, just DM me when you can, and I will send you the instructions. All right, then next one that we're going to do is a thoracic rotation. And I'm going to do it from the floor. I'm playing musical chairs. All right, and this is really key for opening this rib cage so that the pelvic floor can move properly. So you come onto your knees, bring one hand to the back of your head, inhale, take one elbow to elbow, and then as you exhale, open. And I'll stand up and show you how I'm doing that. So I'm just having one hand on the floor, the other hand is at the back of the head. Inhale, I open, rotate my thoracic spine, feel those ribs open, and then as I exhale, I close it in. Inhale, open, exhale, close it in. Inhale, open, and then I repeat on the other side. Why do we need that? We need the rib cage to move properly for the pelvic floor to be able to do its job. When the ribs are not moving, the pelvic floor is in trouble. So we need the ribs to move. We don't think of that. We think of the ribs or the pelvic floor as something that is very foreign to the rest of the body, but the ribs have to be able to move properly for the pelvic floor to move. The next one, yes, Tanya.
Of like repetitions, like how many each side, or how long?
I would say that when you're doing this, do like 10, start with 5 just to get used to it, and then you can build up to 10. Great question. Now, when you're doing things like a child's pose on the floor, you could stay there for just maybe a minute and then come out of it. We're just breathing and letting these muscles of the inner thigh relax. Yeah, good question. Anytime you can be able to do a squat is one of the best exercises for the pelvic floor because it lets the pelvic floor relax. What most of us don't realize is that a tight pelvic floor is a weak pelvic floor. So most of the time we think that a weak pelvic floor is just because the muscles are weak and they can't do anything. But many women, especially if you had children in the 80s, you were told to do your Kegels. And Kegels was that vision of imagining you're stopping pee-pee. So women did it everywhere. They did it in the bathroom, they did it in the car, they did it at the grocery store, they did it at the doctor's office. And that got everybody to be walking around with tight pelvic floors, you know, and that can't do anything now. Those are weak pelvic floors. A tight pelvic floor is a weak pelvic floor. We have to be able to let the pelvic floor release, to let it breathe. So when you inhale, expand everything, the ribs, the back body, the pelvic floor, everything expands, let everything go, let the belly expand. And then as you exhale, let everything now come back in and the pelvic floor lifts. Legs up the wall is one other good exercise. So at the end of your day, when you have finished everything, go and lie at the wall, put your legs up at the wall. You can even stay there for 15 minutes, read a book if you like. That's one of the best exercises to relax the pelvic floor. And it also helps to drain the fluid that's in the legs, which for many women in menopause, there's a lot of fluid accumulating in your legs. Because guess what? The lymphatic drainage is also affected. Jesus. What were they trying to do to us? So the pelvic floor is affected by that too. So legs up the wall every day, 15 minutes at the end of your day. Try and do that. It's great for the pelvic floor. It's great for your kidneys. It's great for your lymphatic drainage. So breath is number one. Work on your breath. Make sure that you're breathing all the way to the belly. You're expanding and letting everything relax as you inhale. And then as you exhale, you will feel that tiny little lift of the pelvic floor. So when you go to lift a heavy grocery bag, you want to inhale to get ready to lift that bag. And then as you lift that heavy bag of rice, you exhale. We always exhale at effort. When you go to help a friend lift a couch, You inhale to get ready, exhale at the effort. That's the best way to protect the pelvic floor. If you're going to step up high on a chair or on a step, inhale to get ready, let everything relax, exhale, step up. Pelvic floor is protected. Always at effort. If there's nothing else you will remember from this webinar on the pelvic floor, exhale at effort. That will protect your pelvic floor. At least it will protect it. And then work on breath to strengthen it. Do your child's pose, thoracic rotation, make sure that the ribs are moving, all right? And the other thing that I like to say with ribs is, women, get your bra checked, change your bra. You can't wear the same bra you used to wear when you were 25. No. Our breasts have changed completely. So if you're wearing the wrong bra, the chest is not moving, the diaphragm is not breathing properly. That affects the pelvic floor. Anything that affects the diaphragm will affect the pelvic floor. So get your bra changed. You need a better bra than what you used to wear when you were 25, maybe a bigger bra, maybe a custom fitted bra, whatever you want to do, all right? If you're in a place where you can walk without a bra, I'm all for it. I'm all for it. Okay. Squatting is good for the pelvic floor and legs up the wall. All right. I think I will let it now be the questions.
So I have one that, do you have anything to offer in terms of the hot flashes and the night sweats?
So the hot flashes and the night sweats, number one is your diet. You will notice that when you have more sugar, the hot flashes and the night sweats get worse. So sugar, just if you want to try an experiment, which will be miserable, is try 1 week of eating whatever sugar you want and then see how it goes. And then the next week, don't eat anything and you will see a very big change. Then the other one is try and make sure that the room that you're sleeping in is cooler than during the day. Close your blinds completely. Make sure it's a darker room and use clothes. If you're sleeping in a night dress, wear something that is breathable, that breathes. You don't want to wear something that's not breathing. Other natural things that can help, things like teas. There is any tea that will help the liver. And in the traditional indigenous culture, there is teas that are given to help the liver. Anything that will help the liver will help with hot flashes. So teas that can help in regular cultures, people use things like dandelion, burdock root, fennel, all those things that help the liver will help with hot flashes. Yeah, and night sweats. Yeah, great question.
I find that really, really helpful, specifically to zero in on the liver and teas or plants that can help, because I hadn't really made that correlation between the liver and hot flashes. So that's a really good tip. I was wondering about that one TikTok I was referencing. Well, there's a couple questions I have for you, which is how's the response? Have you found that a lot of people you're getting a lot of interaction on TikTok? Is this a good forum for you for teaching about being a menopause coach? And then the other one was just that one TikTok that was, bumping into things and metal taste. So these sort of like odd kind of symptoms that you wouldn't normally associate with menopause. So yeah, if you just want to comment on those, that'd be great. They're more complicated questions. Yeah.
Yes. There's some strange symptoms that people don't even realize, like that metallic taste in the mouth. You drink your coffee and it's like, ooh, what happened? There's a metallic taste, and you can also have a metallic smell. The other one is bumping into things, because your spatial awareness has changed. So you will find in menopause, you'll bump into walls and that wall has never moved. It's the same wall, but now you're bumping into it. Or you have a cupboard that you open and you're bumping your head always into it. Someone commented, oh my God, I've been bumping my head into my broom cupboard. And, she said, I was wondering what was going wrong with me. The other one is gums. Gums will start to have problems. Also, the smell changes. I don't know if you've noticed, but your body odor changes. So you have a very different body odor. The other thing that I found out very interesting recently was that with menopause, people do not feel like showering. You wake up in the morning and you're thinking, and especially it was made worse by COVID. People get up in the morning and you think like, I really don't feel like showering today. And COVID made it easier for us because you didn't have to go anywhere. You could be at home. So metallic taste, bumping into things. Mood-wise, one of the things that you will notice and mentally is regurgitating stuff. Somebody tells you something, or you think you've annoyed somebody, and you're replaying this tape recorder 1,001 times, different scenarios, and replaying it, and you keep telling yourself, come on, stop. Let it go. But then tomorrow you pick it up again, you regurgitate it. That's one of the silly symptoms of menopause. Hair loss, brittle nails, fatigue, low libido, all those, and very weird things happen. Anything that's happening that you're feeling, I just can't put this. I can't precisely put this anywhere. What's the problem? Just make a note of it because it could be menopausal symptoms. Yeah.
That's so interesting. Sorry, Tanya, I'll just make this one comment that I remember our Tanya and me, our elder, our Auntie Maria Campbell saying that she said, as you get older, like you were talking about that rubber band that sort of thickens or is not as elastic anymore in the body. She said that also happens to the mind, and
Yes.
that positive thinking positively is really important because you could get into kind of like these ruts of
Yes.
of sort of constantly, like you could get into a rut of bitterness, a rut of negativity, a rut of, because mood swings can bring you into like not good places, sometimes. And they're not controllable, but you could get into these ruts where your brain is not as elastic as it used to be, where you could jump out of them as quickly. So when you said that, it sort of reminded me of what she had said. And so protecting our mental health is really important during this time as well, especially as we're moving away from estrogen even further, I suppose.
Yeah. Protecting our mental health a lot is really key. And from a scientific point of view, there's a doctor who has done quite a lot of research into the brain, the menopausal brain, and her name is Dr. Lisa Mosconi, Mosconi, and she's gotten she's Italian. She's had a lot of funding to research the menopause brain, and she's written a lot. And this is the really first scientific study where they have focused on the woman's brain and in menopause, and to see the changes. So from understanding a scientific and a medical side of view, that's a really nice book to read. Just understanding what happens to the menopausal brain, because it does really change. Yes, it's the menopausal brain. Yeah, really good one to read. Yeah. Excellent. Yes, Tanya, you were saying something.
I just wanted to say that we're running out of time. We got like 5-ish minutes left, and there are, I want to share some of the comments with you and the Q&A. I think there's a question or two in there. So a lot of the participants who are commenting are really happy with the information that you're sharing.
Thank you.
Very much appreciated. I know a lot of it is appreciated by myself as well. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Couple of things before we sign off. We want you to share your social media so people can find you, how they can find you on Instagram and TikTok and wherever else you might be. The questions, one question is, what do you recommend for joint pain, specifically knees? Does taking collagen help? And the other question was my question. Another question was, what can you share about gut health?
Yes. Okay. So collagen does help, but you have to realize that collagen doesn't work on its own. You need things like vitamin C, and it's too long to put here. But if you go onto my social media, Instagram, I did 2 videos on collagen. And when you look at what there is, what else is needed to make the collagen work. Now, if you can, I would highly recommend taking bone broth, because that's the purest and most digestible collagen for our bodies. And it also helps with gut health. So instead of buying the collagen, make your bone broth. And you know that from an indigenous perspective, you can make your bone broth with herbs. You can put herbs in there. You can put so many things that will help instead of going and buying a powder. I always go for the food first. Bone broth is the best collagen that you can get. And yes, it does help with joint pain. Also, if you're going to make your bone broth, put some turmeric and black pepper and some oil, some fat. You need some fat in that collagen. So bone broth has its own fat. But if you're going to make a powder, if you're going to take the bone broth in powder form, you do need a fat in it. Okay. What was the other question, Tanya? I think I forgot it.
I did a little bit with the bone broth, but it was about gut health.
Yes, gut health. Yeah. So gut health is making sure that you're taking fermented foods. Fermented foods are the number one food for your gut. So there's always this take probiotics, but there's one problem with probiotics is that probiotics are made in a lab somewhere. We don't know what kind of probiotics they have. The best thing is to take your fermented food and then take as many varieties of vegetables as you can. The more variety, the healthier your gut, because vegetables are the food that your gut feeds on. Your gut feeds on your gut bacteria feeds on vegetables. So the actual number is that if you can get 30 different types of vegetables per week, the better your gut will be, because your gut bacteria feeds on those vegetables. And then add your fermented food, so sauerkraut, fermented milk, whatever else you use as fermented foods, that is really good for your gut before you go and buy any probiotics. Go for food first. Go for food. Yeah. And if you want any information, just go onto my social media. I usually put very good videos on Instagram, I'm Studio Wanjira. On TikTok, I'm Studio Wanjira. On Facebook, I'm Studio Wanjira. And there's just as much information on all those platforms. It's the same name everywhere: Studio Wanjira, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. I don't change it, so I keep it uniform so people can be able to find me. And if you have any question, if you just send me a comment, I will answer it in a video form or something else. Yeah.
And do you do, for anybody who might be in and around, you're located in Montreal, is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So anybody who
I'm located in Montreal, but I do consultations via Zoom.
Oh, okay. And
yes.
Do you have a place where people can physically come in Montreal to your studio?
I used to have a studio pre-COVID. I had a studio pre-COVID. This is the studio that you can see me practicing in. This was my studio, but after COVID, I closed it, and everything now is online. I do strength training. I do kettlebell training. I do yoga, meditation, and private consulting through Zoom. Even my kettlebell classes are on Zoom. All the women who take them love them very much because they don't have to drive anywhere. They can, and I have students in the US. I have students in Australia. I have some students even in Sweden who take the classes at different times, but they are able to do it online. So that's the beauty of doing things online. And I'm able to teach online because I have quite a few screens in my studio that I can see the students and they can see me as I'm demonstrating. So everything is online now, and I'm happy to be doing it online. Yeah.
That's really great. It's very helpful. Last episode we had Lana Whiskey Jack on, and she was talking about community organizing and
Yes.
having groups of women that come together and do all sorts of things. And so this is something that, you know, if any of you are watching and you're interested in, contact Wanjira through her social media platforms, and maybe there's a group of you that want to do some stuff or some
Yeah.
one-on-one. Don't be afraid to reach out, as she's invited us to do. So I just want to thank you so much for your time today. Thank you everybody for tuning in to our 10th and final episode this season of nôtokwêw, pônkiyokêwin. The old lady stops visiting. And when we say old lady, we always say it in that way of reverence, that way of respect. It's not a put down. When we are, the way we look at our elders, and the way we think of our grandmother, our first grandmother, is in that way of sacred story and the way of teaching. So it's a good name for us. We feel really good about this series, and we thank you for taking the time to tune in to ask your questions. And to Wanjira, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your wisdom and your knowledge with us. We really appreciate you, and I'll be watching your social media like I always do, and I'm really glad to know you. I'm glad to have connected with you in person, well, over Zoom, but you know, rather than over social media. This is wonderful. So I'll turn it over to Tanya, and then we'll give you the last word, Wanjira.
Okay.
I just really wanted to thank you, Wanjira, for being open and willing to come on our show to talk about these things. The perspective that you brought and how you framed things was really relatable. I really liked the imagery that you put forward about, you know, that the twin sisters of estrogen and progesterone, and also the body armor, and how do you get now a bulletproof vest. And I think those were really easy to visualize and understand a little bit more than, you know, the medical talk that we hear often. So thank you so much for that. I also just wanted to remind everyone that you can go to Christi's YouTube channel. Just Google Christi Belcourt YouTube, and you'll find her YouTube channel where all of the episodes are posted. So you could go rewatch them. You could go rewatch this one once we're able to get it uploaded to the YouTube channel. That's where it'll be. And just again, to remind you to look for Wanjira on her social media platforms as Studio Wanjira on all of them, TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram. So I'm a big fan of her Instagram posts. She was just over in France recently, and I was really appreciating the sharing that she was doing on her trip over there. So thank you for joining, and hope to see you next time. And I'll turn it over to Wanjira.
Okay, thank you so much, Tanya and Christi, for having me. I really appreciate it. I always appreciate whenever I'm called to speak to women and just to share and make it easier, because I think women don't have to suffer. And all of you listening out there, just know that you do not have to suffer. There's ways to navigate menopause that make it easier for you and make it a good transition. It's meant to be a sacred second act. It's not the end. It's a sacred second act. And if we can make it sacred, we can make it. We can make it. And we don't have to suffer. Yeah. And thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much for giving me the platform. Yeah.
Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. We'll see you in the fall. I'm going to stop recording now and end the meeting.